Hey guys, boring July day, so I'm going to make a video of my favorite tool for selecting among alternatives, and it is called the Pugh matrix. Why? Because it stinks. No, that's my dad joke. The Pugh matrix, it's an excellent tool when you need to choose among alternatives. So here's how you do it. The first thing is you have to have the criteria that you want to use to select something. So let's say we want to buy a house. So we would probably look at square footage, right? Square feet would be something we would be concerned about. We would probably look at price, I would think, as new homeowners. Maybe distance to the office from where we're going to live. And let's say schools. Let's say we're a family and we have schools, okay? So we've got our criteria, and as you know, in any type of selection matrix, all criteria cannot be equal. So we're going to rate those criteria, not rank them. So I'm going to use a scale of 1 to 5. So let's say that, square footage isn't that big of a deal to us. Price is huge. Let's say distance, we've decided, is also a 3. I'm just doing that to show you that it's rating, not ranking. And then let's say schools are a 4. Now, I made one mistake on purpose. I have facilitated these meetings and watched others do it. I don't make this mistake because I've learned from the past, but let's say someone starts arguing about distance. One executive says, no, it's a 5, and another person says, no, it's a 2, or your spouse says it's a 5 and you say it's a 2. You haven't defined what distance is. So one person might be thinking that it is distance in miles from the house to the office, and everyone that lives here in Atlanta knows that it's really distance in minutes or hours. So then you might come back and say, well, gosh, you know what? Distance is the wrong word for what we're doing. It's travel time. So I'm going to call that TT, travel time. So with anything that I teach, you have to be very specific with your definitions. Otherwise, these exercises are a waste of time. So the other thing you don't bring into a Pugh matrix are must-haves. So for example, if you must have a pool in the house that you're going to buy, then when we get to the houses, house A, house B, house C, we don't put pool as a criteria because it's a must-have. The houses that we look at must have a pool. If we were doing this to buy a truck, a Ford, a Chevy, and a Dodge, and a Toyota, and you have a must-have as 4-wheel drive and 4 doors, the number of doors and drive options doesn't go up here because you don't put an option of selection up there that doesn't have 4-wheel drive and 4 doors. I introduced this the other day, by the way, to a client that was getting ready to interview 4 people for a job. And I said, let me guess, you're going to interview them and then you guys are just going to have a discussion about who you think is best. Yep, that's the way we do it. Why don't you write down what it is you're looking for? Work experience, willing to work overtime, yes or no? Well, then that's a must-have. Number of hours they're willing to work overtime, then that becomes criteria. But why don't you list out the criteria? One, this forces you all to get agreement around what is work experience, for example. And then these are the candidates. So what you do is you just pick the first house, in my example, to be the standard, okay? So the standard wins if it scores a 0, and I'll show you how we do that. Pick the first employee that comes in to be interviewed for the job as the standard. We used this at Johnson & Johnson years ago to pick a sort of an ERP level software for all of Johnson & Johnson for Lean Six Sigma projects. So what we did was we had our criteria. By the way, we sent out an RFP with the must-haves. Don't come to this meeting if you don't already have a solution, meaning don't come in here and tell us you'll make something. So we sent out our must-haves in the RFP, and then when they came in, we evaluated them based on our nice-to-haves, our criteria. By the way, most vendors that I've done this with have said it's the best RFP they've ever gotten because they knew whether or not they wanted to play ball or could play ball. For example, in the Johnson & Johnson example, it was must work with Oracle. So, and then you allowed us the freedom to tell you what we do. All right, so now what happens is you look at your next house, you say, oh, this one's bigger. It's lower, it's higher priced. It's the same distance, and the schools are better, okay? And again, we'd have to make that measurable, like number of A-rated middle schools, in our area, something like that. Let's say square footage, C is worse, better on price, better on distance to work, schools are the same. All right, so we've looked at our 3 houses. Your partner and you sit down. Again, this is the candidates that are applying for the job. This is the consultants that you're looking at to hire for continuous improvement. And you go, it's a positive 3 minus 5, so we're at negative 2. This is standard, so there's no points here. It's sort of like a 0. 0 times 3 is 0. So again, positive times a positive, negative times a negative. So we've got positive 3 minus 5, so we're at negative 2, plus 4, so this scored a 2. We have negative 3 plus 5, so we're at positive 2, plus 3 is 5. This is no points, 5. So the winner is house C. Now, there are, you will say, well, how does 0 win? Easy. The standard is the house that we're going to pick. One thing I would argue is if you get something, let me jump off screen here and get a rag. If you get something that's close, I've had this happen on occasion where, you know, maybe we have a 1 and a negative 1. You don't really have a clear winner here. I would not say this is the winner. I think what you need to do is go back and see if you want to add some more criteria to the selection matrix for picking this thing. So again, this is an amazing tool for HR, the candidates applying for the job. You're looking at hiring a consultant to do something at your company. Here they are. You're looking at ERP software, you know, JD Edwards, SAP. You know, I'm not an ERP expert, but Salesforce. But you get it. Here's what you want. But spend the emphasis here on saying, what are we going to use to select them and make it measurable so that everyone agrees then on the weighting. And what you'll have is a quick, easy way to pick a winner. And so again, Pugh Matrix, a tool that I use a lot. I really enjoy it. And I hope you do as well.